This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA Workweek Radio, and I'm with
Carlos Ordaz.
And Carlos, you live in Lisbon, and you've been active in the labor movement and the socialist movement. The revolution in 1974 was important in the history of Portugal in bringing down the dictatorship. What was the effect of that revolution on the working class in Portugal?
The effect was huge. The effect was in the salaries. For example, the minimum salary was 3, 4, 5 more than was before in the regime, in the fascist regime. Many conquerors like for the woman, for the right to the same salary, for the right to strike. It's a huge difference from the times of the fascism.
And the MFA, that faction in the military that overthrew the government, what was the role of the unions? Were they involved in the overthrow of the government?
No, not particularly, because the unions were not legally like they are today. It was a conqueror of the revolution. It existed some cooperative organizations that the fascist regime made. It existed a start of a confederation, but not like it exists today, like in the communist movement. But they are not organized as they are now. So of course they participate, and the workers' movement participates after the revolution.
So how did the unions and the working class fight for these demands after the revolution? What process did it go through? Were there assemblies, or how did workers start to...
The process of revolution is at least like all revolutions, rich in social differences and social. In some parts of in the major companies, like for example aviation or naval industry, even organizations that have more power in that industries, in that companies, were the workers' commissions. The workers' commissions that exist today are not like unions. And the role of the workers' commissions, that kind of workers' organizations, were more democratic than the unions. Of course, it existed unions, and for example, the metallurgy workers union was a strong, started to be a strong union at that time, in 74 and 75, and making many conquerors, like a collective agreement in 75. A huge conquest of rights, salaries, and so on and so on and so on. But the movement, like any social movement that is revolutionary, any society, it was a real changer, democratic revolution. But in a process of dispute to go to socialism or not, the workers' commission were very make the dynamic. For example, the Communist Party, its major organization was in the unions. Only later he saw the movement of these workers' commissions, and that made the process more rich and more democratic for the workers, with assemblies, with the democratic role completely different from the unions.
Well, how was this organized, these worker assemblies? Were there leftists or communists in the unions that brought that about?
Yes, in the major parts. For example, what I know about the aviation process, for example, in TAP Airlines, the national airline that was privatized now in 2015, it was not the hegemonic Communist Party that was in front, because remember that the first governments in the revolution, the Communist Party was there. So in the first government, for example, they have the workers' minister. So they have official oppositions to strikes. They have to make the opposition to strikes for the national production, or here comes the fascism again. You are irresponsible, and with these strikes you are destroying the country, and then the fascism will come back. And they were in the government, and they opposed many strikes. For example, in TAP airline, they opposed. So they didn't have many tradition there when they have in other companies or in other places. For example, in the posts in 74, 75, that strikes, they were not so, they have to oppose that strikes because they were in the government. So or in the naval industry. So in that places, it was an alternative left, the Maoists, some Trotsky, some that organized that kind of movements, and with more democratic characteristics through that workers' commission that is different from a union itself.
And what was the effect of the collapse, of the ending of the colonialism of Portugal, the colonies? What political effect did that have in the country?
It was a huge political and social effect, because more than 500,000 people come back to the colony. It was a war. What made the revolution was the people who were tired of the regime. The people were tired of the war. Their sons were dying in the war, and that was destroying the regime. And 500,000 of Portuguese come back to the country. Portugal lost the colonies, lost some part of the commodities, or some kind of the commodities that you have, because of lost the diplomatic, some of the diplomatic importance that you have. Besides, they were opposing Portugal, the last country that have the colonialism and so on, in the United Nations and so on and so on. But we know what is the role of United Nations. But it was a huge difference. A huge difference for the country.
Well, the Portuguese Empire, one of the earliest empires, and countries where there were colonies, Brazil, Mozambique. How many countries were colonized by Portugal?
Probably I cannot say all, but for example, I give you an example. Portuguese, the capital of Nigeria, it's called Lagos. It's called Lagos. It was a Nigerian passenger that said to me, because the capital of Nigeria is called Lagos because it was the Portuguese that were there. No, they were some kind of business there. Then they founded, probably they found the city, and they gave the name of the city Lagos because it existed. It exists a city in the south, really in the south of Portugal, where the discoveries in the central part, the boats departed from there, and it's the same name, Lagos. And it's that passenger told me that, and I have to and it's probably it's true. I think it's true. I never confirmed, but it exists a museum in Lagos about slavery. About a municipal museum about slavery, because of that. It was a place for departure of the boat and so on and so on and so on. So it makes sense. But the most known are Brazil, are Mozambique, Angola, Cape Verde, Guinea. Then some city-states like Macau that will come back to China. And parts of India, like Goa, and a known one like Timor-Leste, that they are independent almost 20 years, only 20 years from now, from Indonesia.
But politically, it had a big effect.
Even in Japan. Yeah, even in Japan.
The Portuguese went to Japan to do trading, and they wanted to do business there.
Yeah, of course.
So the political impact of a declining empire and the loss of the colonies for Portugal and the Portugal capitalists, Do you think that that had an effect on the political situation here in Portugal?
Yes, it's an interesting debate. It's only an interview about that because even some part of a called left speaks about that we made in the wrong way this colonization. If that is it's a nice way to it's a
so there's a better colonization,
because we could make like a medium class, you know, like we could make like the Brits made. They now have good contacts, they now have influence. Now, like the spirit continues, the spirit of the empire, you know, the capitalist countries of the free countries continue like that. In some parts of the left, medium class, and so have that Saudosism. Not only the right have that Saudosism, of course.
but the revolution ended that.
Yeah, the revolution ended that. Of
So
course.
it radically changed the process of decolonization.
Yes, it's one. The independence was in 1 year almost in medium for all the countries. In 75, Mozambique, Angola, they were formally independent in 75.
Now, you say that the Communist Party was in the government. What political program that these parties have? Do they call for socialism in Portugal, or they call themselves communists? What was their program when they were in the government after the revolution?
I think it's still the same. They have a victory because there was a national democratic. They are a national democracy. We need to make first the democratic revolution. We have to make a revolution. For example, even today, the Communist Party, the slogan is like in these last elections, some kind of for a left government, for a left and patriotic government. So in that days, it was some kind of that. We have to do the democratic revolution, and they were that is the main idea.
So it was a two-stage theory. First, you have to have a democratic revolution, and then you go to socialism.
Yes, and that is the pressure. Like you said, they were in the government, and they were with an alliance with MFA, the army that you talk, and that movement of officers was representing not the workers, not the working class. Okay, that movement have the pressure of the middle class. They represents not a socialist revolution, represents the freedom, the democratic revolution, the social democracy, if I can.
So bourgeois democracy, a kind of bourgeois, a capitalist democracy.
And they supported that theory of the MFA to give more strength to the movement to the army movement.
So this government took control, and workers' commissions were established. There was some powerful advances of the working class in Portugal. How did that change, and how did these conditions come under attack that were won by the Portuguese working class?
Since then?
In the 80s.
In the 80s. No, the 80s it exists from in 85, 86. And one episode that it's interesting because it's the tripartite agreements that resolved many of the social and political demonstrations in many factories and companies and sectors of the society, of the working class, and that was that since then the working class is in a different way. It's more controlled, not only with the governments, but with the unions, with the bureaucracies of the unions, because they participate in that game, you know. And when when the working class participates in that game, even with their unions and with that kind of directions they have, they are always in inferiority, because they are dealing with the capitalists, the government that represents the same class.
So they accept the capitalist framework.
Yeah.
Now, what was the result of the European Community, European Union in Portugal? Was there any opposition to it in the working class?
No, not really. Portugal was a poor country. And still is. Even more, probably, even more. For example, the minimum wage that exists today, after the revolution, if we count only the inflation, the minimum wage will be much bigger. You know, only if we accept the inflation each year. Do you understand? So we are worst. But the European Union is a project. No? It's a capitalist project for Europe to create a bigger market that some, in principle, Germany, that some give the orders. And Portugal is a submissed country.
And the deindustrialization that took place as a result of joining the European Union, how did that happen, and how did it affect the workers?
No, for example, in 2006, I remember that I bought, because Portugal entered in 1 of January 86 with Spain. And in 2006, I bought a newspaper, a normal newspaper, and you have 20 years after how we are. And 70% of the industry was destroyed.
What kind of industries were destroyed?
And the naval industry, the metallurgy, the siderurgy industry, national siderurgy, we have a national siderurgy, many kind of food industry, some food transformation, the fisheries, a country that have kilometers and kilometers of and square meters of sea, one of the biggest because of the islands, and so we don't have fisheries like the majority. Everybody fish here, the Spanish fish here. We don't have the boats, not even half of the boats or a third of the boats of the Spanish. And they destroyed that naval industry, the fisheries. They destroyed, for example, we had the metro that you see here in Lisbon was constructed in a national industry. It's destroyed also. We don't produce trains anymore. But the blocks were constructed in Portugal. I remember that factory that it's near 15 kilometers near Lisbon in the suburbs of Sintra. More than in the last days. Probably less than 1,000 workers, but there are thousands of workers in the 70s or in the 60s.
So you said that there were some fightbacks against the attack. Timex, other workers at companies did organize fightbacks to defend themselves against what the capitalists were trying to do here.
Yes, since the revolution. And since the desindustrialization, and we call it, in that times, dislocalization of industries, a process of, they say, it's the times. The time X is here, it have to go to the South Hemisphere, to the Asia, because the
outsourcing,
and so on and so on and so on. But it's harder to explain, but why Germany don't do that? Why Germany maintains the industry of Volkswagen with, I don't know.
So they have a national industrial policy in Germany that protects the German working class.
Because they know capitalism better than Portuguese capitalists. They are submissive because they know in the crisis of capitalism they need to have a stable economy. They need to produce. And this country don't produce nothing today.
And what is the reaction of the government to that? I mean, there are these leftists in the government, socialists, communists. What is their position in relationship to capitalist, control from Germany and other countries?
You are talking about the last government. The last government was was created in a way that left against right. And of course, the parties that like the Communist Party or the left bloc give that discussion. Even more the Communist Party. The Communist Party, even today, is the majority. They have the majority of the unions of the working class organized, and it was a discussion. For example, in the airports, they say that to the workers, and the workers believe because they have some part of they are recognized as a direction because they are the direction of the union. It says, hey, we have here an open union. They are a left government, and we can win something, but we didn't win nothing. We didn't even win nothing. We had, for example, 1% of salary higher in 2017, 2018, and 2019, 1% in each year. We didn't have that since 12 years. Before we didn't have any rate in our salary because of the austerity and so on and so on.
So these governments, even though they call themselves left governments or socialist governments, actually are carrying out austerity. They're carrying out capitalist policy.
Yes, yes. The slogans are to end the austerity, but no, they didn't end the austerity. They didn't end the austerity. In these 4 years, the workers in Portugal, in the last years, the workers in Portugal that have the minimum wage passed from 70% to 20%, 21, 22, something like that, in these last years. And the majority is in the tourism, and part in aviation, is in the tourism industry, that Portugal in these years are it's a country of tourism, a country of services, in the majority. Also, the call centers, we have more than 50,000 call center workers here.
Are they in unions?
Yes, it exists, the traditional one, but exists now from 3 or 4 years ago. It exists a new union only for call centers, and that it has some dynamics. It's a young union, but it's in a difficult place because the majority of the call center workers are precarious, with precarious contracts, and it's more difficult to organize. But it's difficult, but it's like we made in the 18th century or in the 19th century. They were not effective also.
So what percentage of the working class is unionized in Portugal?
I don't want to lie. I don't prepared so well to the interview, but I think in the total probably 9%, 10%, maximum 10%. I think. Of course, it exists sectors like the transports. In the transports, I can probably 50-60%. The majority of the workers are unionized.
Is it the unions, when they have a vote for unionization, are there different political factions that are running in the union elections, or how is that organized?
But formally, that appeared after the revolution, after the '74. Yes, because it was more the people were more politicization, more debates. Then in the 90s, the idea starts to disappear. For example, I have some leaflets of the not in unions, but it was the same in unions, like the how you say, the lists that went to the elections of the union were of the parties, with the name of the party and the people there. In the 90s it existed. Now it disappeared, everything. To say, if you appear like you are in a party, you are a divisionist for the Stalinism, you are the divisionists, and
that means you're dividing the working class if you run as a political party.
Yeah, exactly. And for the majority, the common sense, don't mess with us. This is not politics. This is not politics. That's common sense. That was in part responsible of the Communist Party. It's responsible about that, because if they could pass this idea for them to continue to control the organization, not only in the working class, but in other places like the students. It was very used in Portugal in the ends of the 80s and in the beginnings of the 90s. We have the students' movement in the highest, one of the highest movements in that situation, and they passed always that idea. If you have a pamphlet, if I give you a pamphlet with the organization, they will come and beat you like that. So simple like that. It's not that you cannot, oh, please go because you are a divisionist. No, they will beat you physically. Yeah.
And let's talk about the airline industry, because airline workers in the United States have been under attack through deregulation, through privatization. How has this affected TAP, the airline industry here in Portugal?
TAP was, now that we are speaking a bit about the revolution, TAP was private before the revolution. It was a private company. That that the workers that in 74 until 75, I think it was in 75, that now are not present. But it was in the revolution that the air transportation was nationalized. It was a conquest from the revolution.
So the new government nationalized the airline, the national airline TAP?
No, in 74, 75, it was nationalized. Then many governments tried to privatize, like other airlines were in that way, like the British Airways, Air France. Air France, I think the French government detains, I don't know, the last number I know, 20 or 30% of Air France. In 2 or 3 years ago was like that, I don't know what is the number now. But the politics of capitalism to aviation is to privatize all the airlines. And Portugal, because of the revolution, the process of nationalization, you will not privatize after 10 years, because you don't have that possibility, because the country is on fire. But some governments, several governments tried that to privatize, even to the Swiss airlines, to the other Swiss airline. That ended. Now it's not this one, but it tried to pass to private hands, but never made it, with resistance of the workers.
So the workers in the airline fought the privatization.
Yeah, the privatization in that years, in the 90s, to oppose that situation, Till 2014, the governments could not have the courage or the political strength to return the airline to the private hands.
So that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time. The crisis and the austerity in the country, the government before, or the government in that period, not only the right-wing government. The austerity started with the Socialist Party, that is the traditional Social Democratic Party. The Socialist Party, before the right-wing government of the austerity, the other governments started to make agreements with...
And what do the Social Democrats here, the Socialist Party, who are Social Democrats, what did they say about why they had to have austerity?
They started that it was the minister before with the government that is now in court, that accused from corruption and so on, that started the pacts of stability. The pacts of stability were started with in 2008, 2007, 2008 were the first pacts to the austerity. Then it came the right wing, the coalition of the right wing in parliament, and they accelerate the austerity.
So who owns TAP now?
TAP now is a consource of, because the European rule, the European law says that you have always to have a participation of a European country, a European national of European countries. So they make a coalition with a Portuguese capitalists that have the majority of the buses in Portugal are from that guy, and other things. The train, the first train that is private, the train that goes from Lisbon to the south. It's a regional, suburb line. It's private and is from the company of this guy, and they ask him to make the favor to make this coalition with that American, and they have double nationality Brazilian guy, Nilman.
So in other words, they organize the privatization by getting different capitalists to take over parts of the nationalized properties.
Yeah.
And this outsourcing of work, how did that affect the workers, the new sections that were privatized?
So it's the first part to be privatized in the airline was the handling where I work in 2003. Till 2003, all the airline and all the group, it was national. In 2003, 15 years ago, they nationalized the part of grounds, of the handling. And then they started the temporary contracts, precarious contracts. For example, where I work, we have 2,600 workers, sensibly, and plus 1,200, almost a half more of precarious contracts, temporary contracts. So in reality, where I work, the grounds part, the handling part, is 3,800 workers, and TAP airline still have 49.9% of the ground parts, but 50.1 is from the privates. But that privatization of the ground was in 2003. The air transportation was privatized in process of 2014, 2015.
And how did that privatization affect these? They became temporary workers, precarious workers, the new workers that were hired in the privatization.
No, after the privatization. But in 2015 or
2015.
No, what they are doing is let's see, they cannot legally they cannot hire a temporary worker legally. No, they cannot. Some companies do it, but TAP Airline don't make any temporary contracts of the captains and pilots and of the air transportation. Okay, we have collective agreements since the revolution, and what they are doing is to not to contract individually, not by collective agreement, and that is a decay in the conditions of the worker.
So isn't that union busting? Union busting if you have individual contracts. If a company has individual contracts with individual workers, your collective power is pretty much decimated.
Yes, you can represent them, but they are not the same. It's not the same, but you can represent them. But TAP Airline, TAP is making contracts, and directly, not temporary contracts, and then 1 or 2 years they will pass to the airline, but not with the collective agreement, of the airline, and that it represents that some workers, and they are contracting with some parts to the ground also, because they still have some part on the ground. Some workers, what that means that they will stay with the same salary indefinitely.
No salary increases?
Yeah, no salary increases because they are not in the collective agreement. This, for example, that is the worst things that can happen. They don't know if they will have a different salary one day.
So are these workers angry about that?
Yes, the unions don't deal too much with this. Probably no. We can. The workers' movement is and we feel that in aviation, and with this last government we felt that, because it's with this class agreement, or class, we are, like we say in, I don't know the word in English, adormecidos. The unions now in Portugal, and I think in all the world, but the union, because the union is a capitalist institution, but is very assistantialist. We are, what we see here is they don't fight. You know, they give privilege to the courts. Processed in the courts.
So basically they're accepting the framework of privatization, contracting out, and saying you can't really fight the government. Is this a political issue in the election?
They give the illusion to the workers they can resolve the problems in this way, in the marks of capitalism. Of course, in our opinion, that is impossible, because they will have always, the capitalists will always try to get more from the workers, but they give they feel like this in this assistantialist way, and we have to have calm, and let's wait for the court, what the court says, and in many times the court says nothing.
So there's no independent mobilization?
No.
By the unions?
They don't say to the workers that they have to be mobilized to have something more.
What about these workers' organizations, these workers' councils or workers' talking about?
Yeah, that since the revolution, the law was changing to give even less power to this kind of organization. So it's not, and they have a paper now of controlling the finance. It's a big illusion, because even the capitalists didn't give the real numbers they are doing, and now.
So would you say this is fraudulent? There's really no control by workers through these assemblies.
No, there's no control. There's no control.
And you can't even get the proper numbers of what's going on.
They don't give the proper numbers. Even the law. The law says something, they don't care. They pass through the law. If you say you say to any court, or we have something like every country, the inspection, the workers' inspection office, that is a formal state inspection about the workers' conditions and workers' problems, and we are many times that you ask for their help, they don't do nothing, really nothing. And they know that it's illegal, but they do nothing.
And the government, of course, doesn't enforce the laws. If there are laws on the books saying that the company has to provide information, if they don't provide it, the government doesn't say you have to provide it or else we're going to punish you.
It's even worse than that, because I will say if the government it was serious, it's not serious. Any government is serious in capitalism, of course, but the laws that exist, if they make some they fiscalize that situation. They don't need to change the law, only to have fiscalization if the companies are doing the law. I will give you one example. In aviation, if you want, if a ground company to operate, to give assistance to airplanes, the Portuguese law since '96. At least since '96, says that each airline, each company that does handling needs a collective agreement. Needs a collective agreement, and it exists in some parts, companies that in parts that now it's all liberalized. That companies don't have that collective agreement. So the government knows that. But never made that or fiscalization. You know?
Are there any political parties in Parliament that challenge that challenge the fact that the government is not even enforcing the capitalist laws as far as worker protection.
Yeah, they say. The problem is not that, for example, the Communist Party is in Parliament. And we go there to speak with them. And they agree with us. Or left bloc, we go there speak with them. And they agree with us. And they do questions to the government in the Parliament. They do, and then they send a text to the workers or the party, the workers that are from that party, print a leaflet. Then the Communist Party made a question to the government. That is an injurious situation, the aviation workers. But we don't have any strike since almost 3 years.
Are strikes banned here?
No.
They're made very difficult to...
They want to ban. They are talking about that even in aviation. Internationally, in Europe, they are talking about that. Seriously, in Italy, it's a serious question. Not here, still not, but they are starting to talk about that. But we don't have any strike in the aviation since 3 years in the ground in the handling since 3 years ago, and we were one of the most mobilized sector in the country years before, and in the austerity. And why? Because the majority of the unions are or directly connected with the Communist Party and the Confederation of the Communist Party, that is the biggest, and they have the compromise with the Communist Party that was with the agreement with the government, and in the government, not in the government with ministers, but with that agreement, or the Socialist, or the Socialist Party, that they have also a confederation, and they are with the government, so they cannot it's that
they're in a coalition, they're in the government, so they don't want to fight the government by taking worker action. They would oppose strike action.
Yeah,
they oppose strike action.
But really, I'm not speaking in generality, because it's a bit weird. It's not so weird. For sure, it exists. This kind of histories in every part of the world. But for example, 1 year ago, I received a message from one of the directors of my union saying, through another person, and he showed me, say to him, because we made in our sector, they maintain a strike for 1 or 2 hours. You know, that kind of strike that you can do it every day if you.
It's more of a PR stunt.
Yeah, that destroys, because it's not a collective one. You know, because everybody can do strikes at 6 a.m. till 8 a.m. It was something like that, but nobody organized, and the union not organized, and nobody,
So these unions are really not organizing strikes?
Yeah.
Serious strikes?
Really, not organizing serious strikes. But they say, no, we are fighting, see, we have strikes out there, and we are dealing now with administrations, start to make some conquests for the collective agreement, and so on and so on. And the message was, please don't do nothing now, because we are speaking them about the collective agreement. And I said to the boy, hey, that is our difference, because I will not tell you the illusion. This is the illusion that the workers will conquer something different with sitting around the table with the capitalists. They will not. You need to fight. You need to make strikes. It's not kind of a fetishism to make a strike, no, but you need to fight. When they go to speak without capitalism, the capitalism have to know that, because the union have an army and it's mobilized. And our administration knows that we are not mobilized.
Because this union bureaucracy does not want to strike, and they're in a government that they want to support.
Yeah, it's worse. And it's worse today, 4 years after this government experience, and the illusion of the bureaucracy that says to the workers, calm down. Now we have a window. It's a left-wing government, and we will make some conquests. But the workers are not seeing nothing, and they are demoralized.
And what is this left? What is this left bloc in the government?
What is
the left bloc? What is it? You say there's a left bloc in the government, to the left of the
party. That party.
What party is that?
No, now it's a party. It was a party founded about small alternative left or revolutionary left. the Socialist Revolutionary Party, that it's a Trotskyist faction, a Maoist party, the UDP, and a small party of dissidents from the Communist Party, Social Democratic also. And that was made a coalition, not a coalition, a bloc. Then that was a coalition, but in a project to found a new party. Like let's not maintain all the left or the alternative left apart, always apart. Let's make electoral front.
This is like Podemos in Spain, similar to that?
Yes, but before. Because Podemos, it's different because the political situation is different, because Podemos is in the mark of the huge capitalist crisis and the austerity. Here is different. Probably a process, for sure a process of the revolution, of the political process, And in '99, they decided to make that coalition. And in the first legislative elections, for the first time, the alternative left two parliamentaries, And they also made the agreement with the Social Democratic Party, the left government that experience that everybody spoke in the world.
So in other words, these communist left groups joined in a left bloc and then went into an alliance with social democracy. With the social democratic government.
Yes.
But they carry out capitalist policies of austerity and attacks on the working class.
Yes. And in '99, left bloc had another program. Of course, it was a reformist one. It speaks in socialism in times of happiness or when it was a fest. But now it's worse. It's completely social democrat, and yes, they make that agreement. So as you told me.
So, what are the prospects for the working class here in Portugal and internationally? I mean, you are part of an international section of the working class, aviation workers. All aviation workers worldwide have faced similar attacks. With Ryanair, pilots have been on strike. There's an effort of workers to self-organize and to fight back against these attacks.
Yes, the aviation is probably, I will say that it's where capitalists are really accelerating the problems of the regime. Aviation in the last decades, it's a huge numbers, like in passengers. For example, in July this summer, I think the number it was a new record in the world of flights that were 220,000 airplanes. The flights in the world. It's completely, it's crazy.
And what has it meant to Portugal? I mean, Lisbon, gentrification, Airbnb. How has that been escalating? How has that affected the working class?
Yes. It's affecting. It's affecting because since 10 years ago we tripled the passengers. From 9 million to 29 million. So in Lisbon only in Lisbon.
So 9 to 29 million.
Yeah, 9 to 29. So huge. You can imagine what that impact is. We can end the interview because you can imagine what that impact is, so it's
been very profitable for the capitalists, that increase.
Yes, and for the project of tourism, it's a very volatile part of the economy. You are not producing, constructing boats or constructing trains. You are receiving people in hotels, and probably tomorrow you will not receive people in hotels. Probably tomorrow you will not construct boats, but boats are necessary always. But But aviation, almost all the categories in aviation, besides I'm speaking on ground, starts with minimum wage in Portugal, and the tourism starts with minimum wage. And aviation works in shifts, on shifts. Lisbon Airport works 24 hours a day, and all the days of the year. It's the first airport of emergency. So yet we have the necessity to have still open every day. And that's a crazy situation here in the city, because, for example, since 2004 that we made here the European soccer, football, soccer, and so on, they made an exception for the flights to fly at night. And since then, the championship ended, and they didn't revert the exception. So since 2000, in 15 years, we continue to have more flights flying at night than even the European Union advises or have in their committee agreements. But nobody says nothing. They know, but nobody says nothing, because it's in the interest of the development of the country, and it's in the interest of. Do you know? Can I make you a question? You have idea how many tons of an airplane can carry in jet fuel?
How many tons?
Tons.
Thousands.
Thousands. Dozens of thousands. If you make a flight from San Francisco to Lisbon, dozens of thousands of jet fuel are burned. So it's completely crazy. When we talk about privatization in aviation, and in majority of the transports, my idea is the transports cannot be capitals. It's impossible, because the transports are not to make profit. The transports are serving the mobility of the people, the workers, to go to their job, to go to their house, to go to visit someone, to go on holidays. It's that service. It's not to profit. And if we make the paradigm, they have put the paradigm of profit in aviation, it can happen very dangerous things that they are happening now. It's happening crazy things in every part of the world.
Like what? What kind of crazy things?
Pollution, not only noise pollution for the cities, but the pollution. Now are appearing studies. It was a study of a Portuguese investigator published 3 months ago of the ultrafine particles. The ultrafine particles, numbers unimaginable that are proven. The medicine knows that are cancerous, and things completely crazy. The pollution is completely crazy. The airport infrastructures are the most pollutant infrastructures in the world. For example, the only infrastructure that exists in Portugal that we can compare with the airport of Lisbon, it's in the south, the refineries of the petroleum that arrive. And even that's probably the airport of Lisbon. I don't know any studies
So this is not even discussed.
No.
In the capitalist media, there's no discussion about the effect of pollution as a result of airports, this massive increase in transportation.
Worse, Steve, because now this government, the last government, signed an agreement to a second airport in Lisbon that is an army base that is in the south, that will be some reforms to accept more planes. The project is for Lisbon to have 50 million, to have the capacity to put 50 million passengers here. Now it's 30 million, 20 million more.
And Lisbon is a small city.
With this logic, yes, it's a small city. It's half a million in the city, but the big Lisbon is 2 million something.
So you're talking 2 million population in the Lisbon area, and then 29 million people coming in to Lisbon.
Yeah.
The effect on the people here, the community.
Yeah, we don't. It's impossible. A medium wage salary to have an house in Lisbon. It's impossible. And for the private and the capitalism, when they are dealing with this kind of business, it's even more dangerous. It's in the way to barbarity, for sure. Because for example, I'm always, when it appears a new flight, every month a new flight. Now it's Lisbon to Valencia. Valencia, it's a city that you go by airplane, they do 1 hour and a half, but you can do it by train. All the advertises of the airlines and the low cost after the summer, they made now that it's in the metro to advertise. Babe, you are tired now. You want to go with holidays again. So make, I don't know the words in English, sorry for my English. It's, you have to go next weekend, go to, imagine, Paris by 19 euros. No, that is the concept of traveling, that is impossible. It's they are really destroying the planet, and aviation is part of that. And aviation cannot be in the hands of these guys. It's impossible. They will destroy. And it's not. They organize the travels in the profit. It's not on the service of the mobility of the people of the world.
And you're saying railway is more efficient and less toxic.
Yes, of course.
But they're not building the railways.
No. They are not. They are never made that, because it's the lobby. It's the project. It's aviation in every part of the world. Of course, some countries do some rail. Spain have more rail than us and invests a little more. But for example, from Lisbon to Madrid, the Lisbon airport have at least 20 flights a day. And Lisbon-Madrid is 600 and something kilometers, 620 kilometers. You can do it by a train with 2 hours, from in the center of the city to the center of the city. If you go with the 2 airports and by plane, it's completely, it's strange. And for sure, you'll get more time by airplane for getting out of the airport, for getting out of the airplane, to pick your luggage, to get the metro from Barajas to the center of Madrid. You will get more time, and with 1 train or 2 trains or 3 trains, you can, for sure, more people can go to Madrid that go by airplane, because they can transport more people. But it's impossible a capitalist society to have a good train system or to have a good aviation, because that is not. We have a discussion here in Portugal that is, hey, let's construct a new airport. Yeah, because we need a new airport. For example, the Communist Party made a conference in the elections in October saying, yeah, we need a new airport for a patriotic reason. They made a debate in the airport. We need a patriotic. It's like this. We need a patriotic politics for the aviation, and I think. Patriotic, but you cannot have a patriotic politics for aviation, because aviation, they don't fly only in Portugal, they all to other countries, and the logic to have flights to other countries, it's a capitalist logic, and in the mark of capitalism, we cannot have a good aviation or a good train, because we need a new airport, because the Lisbon airport is in the center of the city. The problems of safety, the problems of pollution, noise, and combustion particles, and so on. We need a new airport, but we don't need only a new airport. We need a new infrastructure that probably have to have connection with the train.
They're not talking about trains.
They talk about trains, but everybody talks about the airport or the trains. They don't see that they need to make the same discussion. But of course, that discussion is very hard in capitalism, because capitalism is, even in aviation, start to resolve some part of the construction crisis in the construction industry. They start to resolve with the construction of airports, because it's thousands of millions of money that are involved in the construction of airport infrastructures. That was also privatized. That was state-owned, and in the austerity, in the last days of the right-wing government, they signed the concession to the French of Vinci. That is, Vinci is now owns the concessions of the Portuguese airports till 2062.
So they privatized the airports themselves.
With 50 years, they gave 3 million euros. That is nothing.
Carlos, this issue of transportation and the crisis for the working class, they've introduced this card, and what is this card, and why did they introduce it? What is the effect?
We have social passes for transportation, social cards to use, and since April this year, the government applied lower prices to that social card and giving more array of transportation. For example, this card costs 40 euros, and we can travel of every transportation, not airplane, but boat, metro, bus, in an array of 50 kilometers. But what explains this? Of course, this was positive, and majority of the persons see like it was positive, because it existed before. Some people that lived 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers from the city that paid a month 120 euros. Now they pay 40 euros. And
shouldn't it be free? Shouldn't the capitalists pay for this?
I'm also that opinion, because it's a service, it's a social service.
The capitalists need workers.
Yes. That is what explained, because we are talking about the problem of the gentrification and the cities and the aviation and the tourism. Like, it's not happening only in Lisbon, but in the United States also, and in every part of the Europe. But this is the solution of the capitalists, to give the workers the chance to come to work, because we cannot rent houses in Lisbon. It's
been gentrified. It's been completely gentrified.
I think more than the majority of the cities in the world, because the minimum wage in Portugal is lower than 1,000 euros. The minimum wage is 600 euros, and one fifth of the population wins that money. So it's impossible to rent an apartment with 2 bedrooms in Lisbon that is 1,200. So for you to have the idea, and of course it's a demographic problem, and it's a political problem. They have to resolve for the people to can rent houses in a circle of 40-50 kilometers that are cheaper, and come back to work to the city.
So it's allowing the development of capitalism by lowering the cost of the transportation, because workers can no longer afford to live in Lisbon because of the gentrification. And the left parties, what did they say this was? This was a gain of socialism?
No, it was a conquer. It was a conquer, not a gain of socialism, but it was a conquer. It was a victory of the left government, and so good on. But you know how it costs to the government every year. It's not only in this city, but also in the other city of Porto that have 104 million, 110 million of euros each year. 110 million of euros. That is nothing for a country. This lowering the cars costs 100 million of euros. I'm saying this number for you to see the hypocrisy of a government. We have a huge strike of the truck motorists of the dangerous goods, jet fuel and gas and so on. And one thing they say, because because of the salary, because they have very low salaries, but it was in the summer when it was 2 strikes, but in this summer it was the highest one. And they said, one of the things the union says in a new union that was created, that they say in the strike that the capitalist that owns the companies of the trucks was going. How we say go out of the taxes. Taxes.
They're not paying taxes.
Taxes
they get tax subsidies.
Yeah, worth 300,000 million of euros. So, and the government knows this, assumes this, but defends the capitalists against.
This is the left. This is the left government.
Yeah, defend the capitalists against, and even the parties that are made the agreement, Left Bloc and the Communist Party, didn't didn't oppose directly the strike, but didn't appear besides the motorists.
So they didn't challenge the framework of the whole economic framework, of the fact that the capitalists are making tremendous amounts of profits and they're not being taxed.
But if the government fiscalize the capitalist that owns the companies of the trucks, they could subsidize for 3 years this card. For you to know what is the simple thing that should be free, because it's a social service, that are transporting people for work or on the weekends, whatever.
So the program, none of the program of these parties say free transportation for the working class.
No, with some distech, no, I don't know, but no, don't say it like that.
Because that would mean challenging the capitalists,
yes.
That the capitalists have to pay for the transportation.
Yes, that's of course.
So where's all this money going that's being made in here in Lisbon, if it's not going to the working class?
I don't know, but I read the study that it's everybody, a public newspaper study that in this time of austerity, 50 billions of money was to offshore fiscal paradise from Portugal. They detected that, and that is two-thirds of the money that we have to ask borrowed to the International Monetary Fund. For you to see where is the money, I don't know, but that it exists.
Is this the recolonization of Portugal? I mean, it seems like Portugal, like Greece, has basically lost control of the wealth.
In a certain way, I don't really colonization. In a certain way, it is. We have to study more the economy of the country and to know the grade of dependency of the Portuguese economy from the outside.
But isn't the Portugal economy totally controlled now by a large portion of the Portuguese economy is controlled by multinationals?
The majority of the banks today are not Portuguese. You know, that who deals with the money in Portugal, the majority, we have a state bank deal, but it's not the majority of the capitalists, or the banks are Spanish. The majority, Santander today is the biggest bank, is the Spanish bank, that are also in Latin America, and so the biggest bank in Portugal. We have to study more, but I think if it's not, the tendency is that the biggest factory in Portugal is Volkswagen. All the automobilistic factories are not Portuguese, are for multinationals. So I believe yes, but to make an affirmation, we need to study more the Portuguese economy and to see the growth of dependency. But I think if it's not, the tendency is that for sure. Then that is the European project.
Okay, thank you.
You wanted to ask healthcare?
Oh, healthcare. Now, one issue that's come up is in the United Kingdom, the privatization of the National Healthcare Service, and there's been some talk about Portugal having a good healthcare system that is not come under the attack and privatization of the capitalists. What is the actual situation with healthcare in Portugal?
No, it's coming in attack. It exists, still exists. It was created after the revolution model. It was a model to the world. In the OCDE targets, we were always in the three first grades. We are a very good national healthcare. 20 years ago, you went to an hospital, you didn't pay nothing, or almost nothing. With first prime doctors, surgeons, and now it's all it's very difficult. The governments from 20 years from now, I say that, is not giving so much money to the healthcare. So it's saying that if now I have the discourse of the healthcare cannot comport all the surgeries, and so we have to subsidize the private. Other policy was, we have problems make the directing hospitals publicly. Let's make half public and half private. The privates will make the gestion of the hospital. Completely failed projects. It exists some hospitals in that situation that we call it the public-private
Partnerships.
Exactly. Thank you. Public-private partnerships. Some of the experience were very, 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 very unfortunate, with deaths and grave, very costly things, people's lives. Yeah, they abandoned some of that projects, but it's of course if you go to United States or if you go to other countries. You can compare the Portuguese national healthcare is still a good national
Compared to the United States.
Really, that is easy, unfortunately. But it's not what it is from 20 years ago. If you go to an hospital, you can if you are not good with your throat and you make some blood tests, you can pay 15, 20 euros. Now it's that, now it's that. And if some kind of surgeries, you cannot be, you have to wait 7 months, 1 year, and the state says, okay, if you have to wait more than 6 months, I don't know, but something like that, I have numbers for some specialties, we give you a check, then you go to the private hospital, and the privates like it. It's a business.
It's privatization of your healthcare system.
It's incredible. It's like transportation. It's even worse than transportation. But making business with the health of the people, it's completely crazy. It's completely crazy. But it's destroying. Of course, it's one of the things of the revolution that we are talking. That is also degrading in degradation.